Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So we continue reading from Srimad Bhagavatam. We are on Canto 5, Chapter 13, Text 9. We have been hearing the transcendental knowledge that Bharata is giving to Maharaj Rahūgaṇa. Kvachin nikirno jagarha hinachano
Kvachanti nihiro Jagannath Adi Jana
naveti kinchid vipine pavittaha
Naveti kinchet vipina pavitaha
yashta smashete kvachadanda shukker
Asta sameshe te kvacha tanda shukka
ando andakupe patitas tamisre.
Ando nanda kupe patitas tamishri.
Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. The conditioned soul in the material forest is sometimes swallowed by a python or crushed. At such a time, he is left lying in the forest like a dead person, devoid of consciousness and knowledge. Sometimes other poisonous snakes bite him. Being blind to his consciousness, he falls down into a dark well of hellish life with no hope of being rescued. When one becomes unconscious due to being bitten by a snake, one cannot understand what is taking place outside the body. This unconscious condition is the condition of deep sleep. Similarly, the conditioned soul is actually sleeping on the lap of the illusory energy. Bhaktivinoda Thakur has sung, Kota Nidra Jao Maya, Pishachira Kole. O living entity, how long will you sleep in this condition on the lap of the illusory energy? People do not understand that they are actually sleeping in this material world, being devoid of knowledge of spiritual life. So we are actually the soul, but we are thinking we are the body, and all our activities, all our desires, we are doing it for the body. And that's why Bhaktivinoda Thakur is saying we are sleeping on the lap of Maya. Maya is called a Pishachira, like a witch. She has bewitched us. So how long will we sleep, he's saying. How long are you going to sleep? Our sleep is this ignorance that we have forgotten our true identity, our real life. Caitanya Mahaprabhu therefore says, Eneche Ashodi Maya Nashibara Lagi, Harinam Mahamantra Lao Tumi Magi. I have brought medicine to awake every living being from perpetual sleep. Please receive the holy name of the Lord, the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, and awaken. So the medicine to cure us from this material disease, to wake us up and bring us to the spiritual platform is this Harinam Sankirtan. Lord Chaitanya is saying he has brought us this medicine. He's saying, please receive this holy name and wake up. The Katha Upanishad 1.3.14 also says, Uttishta Jagrata Prapya Varan Nibodhata. O living entity, you're sleeping in this material world. Please get up and take advantage of your human form of life. The sleeping condition means loss of all knowledge. Just like when we are sleeping at night, we forget everything. We even forget who we are. We forget everything. We forget our reality just in deep sleep. So similarly, our existence here in the material world is full of ignorance. We are sleeping to our real identity as spirit souls, to our real life, spiritual life in the spiritual world, our spiritual activities, our spiritual form, our relationship with God, with Krishna. In Bhagavad Gita 269, it is also said, Ya Nisha Sarva Bhutanam Tasyam Jagrati Samyami. What is night for all beings is the time of awakening for the self-controlled. Even in the higher planets, everyone is under the spell of the illusory energy. No one is really interested in the real values of life. The sleeping condition called Kala Sarpa, the time factor, keeps the conditioned soul in a state of ignorance, and therefore pure consciousness is lost. In the forest, there are many blind wells, and if one falls down in one, there is no chance of being rescued. In a state of sleep, one remains perpetually bitten by some animals, especially snakes. Like if we are in a forest, there's no one there, and if we fall down in the well, who will bring us out of the well? We can't come out ourselves. It's too deep. There's nobody around. So what we are going to do? So Lord Chaitanya is saying he has brought us this medicine to wake us up, to bring us to the spiritual platform. This Harinam Mahamantra. Kali Yuga Dharma Harinam Sankirtan. Says the Shastras are saying that. Karhi smachechudra-rasan vichinvams.
Karhi smatchit shudra nashina vichittamans
Tanmakshikabhirvyatati tavamanaha.
tanma shikapirvyatati vinamaha
Ratikrichrat pratilabdhamano.
taratri kachitat pratilavitamanu
Balad vilumpanti athatam taton.
baladi vimupani attatam tatonya.
Sometimes, in order to have a little insignificant sex enjoyment, one searches after debauched women. In this attempt, one is insulted and chastised by the women's kinsmen. This is like going to take honey from a beehive and being attacked by the bees. Sometimes, after spending lots of money, one may acquire another woman for some extra sense enjoyment. Unfortunately, the object of sense enjoyment, the woman, is taken away or kidnapped by another debauchee. In a great forest, honeycombs are very important. People often go there to collect honey from the combs, and sometimes the bees attack and punish them. In human society, those who are not Krishna conscious remain in the forest of material life simply for the honey of sex life. Such debauchees are not at all satisfied with one wife. They want many women. Day after day, with great difficulty, they try to secure such women, and sometimes, while trying to taste this kind of honey, one is attacked by a woman's kinsman and chased very heavily. By bribing others, one may secure another woman for enjoyment. Yet another debauchee may kidnap her or offer her something better. This woman hunting is going on in the forest of the material world, sometimes legally and sometimes illegally. Consequently, in this Krishna consciousness movement, the devotees are forbidden to have illicit sex. Thus, they avoid so many difficulties. One should remain satisfied with one woman being duly married. One can satisfy one's lusty desires with his wife without creating disturbances in society and being punished for doing so. So, because it's a tendency in human society to go to different women. So, the injunction is just stay with one wife. Kvachicha shita tapavata varsha
Kachincha shitpa varsha
kati kriyam kartumani shaaste.
क्रियां कर्तुम् अनीशास्ते
Vachin mito vipanan yacha kinchit
क्वचिन्मितो विपणन् च किञ्चित्
vidvesham richati utavitta sathaya.
विद्वेषं ऋक्षतुवेत साक्ष्य.
Sometimes the living entity is busy counteracting the natural disturbances of freezing cold, scorching heat, strong wind, excessive rainfall, and so forth. When he's unable to do so, he becomes very unhappy. Sometimes he is cheated in business transactions one after another. In this way, by cheating, living entities create enmity among themselves. This is an example of the struggle for existence, the attempt to counteract the onslaught of material nature. This creates enmity in society, and consequently, society is filled with envious people. One person is envious of another, and this is the way of the material world. So, this is the struggle of existence, and being envious of each other, because it comes to the point of being envious of God, of wanting to imitate God. That's why we are here in the material world. The Krishna consciousness movement aims at creating an atmosphere of non envy. Of course, it's not possible for everyone to become Krishna conscious, but the Krishna consciousness movement can create an exemplary society wherein there is no envy. So Prabhupada understands, of course, not everyone is going to join the Krishna consciousness movement, but he's saying at least whoever joins it, then they can be an example to the others of being non-envious. Kvachit shena dhanastu tasmin
क्वचित् कृष्णाधनसतु तस्मिन्
shayasanastha viharahinaha.
शयासनस्थितिना विधराहिणा
Yachan parat apratilaptakamaha
याचन् परत् अप्रतिलब्धा कामा
आरक्य दृष्टिर्लभते वमानम्.
पाराख्यदृष्टे लभते वमानम्.
On the forest path of material existence, sometimes a person is without wealth, and due to this does not have a proper home, bed, or sitting place, nor proper family enjoyment. He therefore goes to beg money from others. But when his desires are not fulfilled by begging, he wants to borrow or steal the property of others. Thus, he is insulted in society. The principles of beg, borrow, or steal are very appropriate in this material world. When one is in want, he begs, borrows, or steals. If begging is unsuccessful, he borrows. If he cannot pay, he steals. And when he is caught, he is insulted. This is the law of material existence. No one can live here very honestly. Therefore, by trickery, cheating, begging, borrowing, or stealing, one tries to satisfy his senses. Thus, no one in this material world is living peacefully. So, this is the ways of the material world. Like how Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, every endeavor is filled with fault in the material world. There's no perfection in this material world. We are trying to find perfection in this world, but we can't find it. Every endeavor is filled with some fault here. That's just the nature of this world. Anonyavita vyatisanga vriddha
अनोन्यवित्तव्यतिशङ्गवृद्ध
vairānubandho vivahan mithascha.
वैरानुबन्धो विवहन्मितस्य
Advani amushmin urukrishravitta.
अत्वानि मुनि मुमुषिं नो कुरुक्षितवित्त
Bhado pasarger viharan vipannaha.
भादोपशङ्ग्रे विहरन् विपन्नः
Due to monetary transactions, relationships become very strained and in enmity. Sometimes a husband and wife walk on the path of material progress, and to maintain their relationship, they work very hard. Sometimes, due to scarcity of money or due to diseased conditions, they are embarrassed and almost die. In this material world, there are many transactions between peoples and societies, as well as between nations, but gradually these end in enmity between the two parties. Similarly, in the marriage relationship, monetary transactions are sometimes overpowered by the dangerous conditions of material life. One then becomes diseased or monetarily embarrassed. In the modern age, most countries have developed economically, but due to business exchanges, relationships seem to be strained. Finally, wars are declared between nations, and as a result of these upheavals, there is destruction all over the world, and people suffer heavily. So, we are practically seeing there's currently two wars going on. We are seeing what Bhagavatam is saying for the material world, that there's always so much disturbance here in the material world, can't be truly peaceful. Tamstan vipanan sahitatra tatra
तांस्तान् विपिनानुशाहि तत्र तत्र
vihaya jatam parigrahya sarthaha.
विहाय जातां परिगृहमशाथ
Avartate dyapi na kaschidatra
आवर्तद्यापि न कश्चित् तत् अत्र
viradvana paramupaiti yogam.
विराध्वन पारुमपैति योगम्.
My dear king, on the forest path of material life, first a person is bereft of his father and mother, and after their death, he becomes attached to his newly born children. In this way, he wanders on the path of material progress and is eventually embarrassed. Nonetheless, no one knows how to get out of this, even up to the moment of death. In this material world, family life is an institution of sex. Yan Maitonadi Grahamedi Sukham, Bhagavatam, Canto 7, Chapter 9, Text 45. Through sex, the father and mother beget children, and the children get married and go down the same path of sexual life. After the death of the father and mother, the children get married and beget their own children. Thus, generation after generation, these things go on in the same way without anyone's attaining liberation from the embarrassment of material life. No one accepts the spiritual processes of knowledge and renunciation, which end in bhakti yoga. Actually, human life is meant for jnana and vairagya, knowledge and renunciation. Through these, one can attain the platform of devotional service. So at least, Prabhupada is saying, at least begin Gyan, Vairagya, and then gradually one will come to bhakti. Unfortunately, people in this age avoid the association of liberated people, sadhu sangha, and continue in their stereotyped way of family life. Thus, they are embarrassed by the exchange of money and sex. So, we are also attached to family life. Prabhupada is saying one should associate with the devotees so that we can come to the platform of bhakti yoga. Engage in some kind of knowledge, try to acquire knowledge, try to get detached from the world. And these processes will bring us to bhakti. As Krishna speaks of the yoga ladder in Bhagavad Gita, no? That doing karma, coming to uh, Gyan Yoga, coming to Dhyan Yoga, then coming to Bhakti Yoga. So one may not be able to take up bhakti directly, but at least start the process. Any questions or comments?
Mm, Hare Krishna. Not actually question. Like, but in the past life, like past Indian life, there was also the same process. Like they married, they gave birth of kids, and then again children they married. So the only difference, like before, they have some spiritual and liberation with like bhakti. But in this Kali Yuga, nobody is related with these all things, right?
Yes, that's right.
Mm,
Yeah. So, of course, marriage as an institution is a must in society, you know.
mm,
But as you rightly said, cultivate spiritual knowledge side by side,
mm.
which we are forgetting to do. So
Yes,
that's
yes.
the
In
thing.
Kali Yuga, everyone is busy with, like, they are related with some glittery or lust with some unrelevant things, which maybe we can call sex or opposite sex attraction or something like that.
Yeah, so then we just get so busy in our material life, we forget to cultivate
Mm.
spiritual knowledge. So
Yes,
do, along with the material life, we cultivate spiritual knowledge. We do
right.
our hearing,
Yes.
chanting. Yes,
Yeah. Okay. Hare
yes, thank
Krishna.
you. Hare Krishna. Manasvino nirjita dikkajendra
Manashvino nirjita dikkachendra
mameti sarve bhavibhadaveraha
mameti sharve bhuvivakta
hrideshairan natutad vrajanti
मृधे शरीरन्तु तद्व्रजन्ति
yanyashtadando gatavero bhiyati.
यन्यस्तदन्तो गतवैरोऽभियाति.
There were and are many political and social heroes who have conquered enemies of equal power. Yet, due to their ignorance in believing that the land is theirs, they fight one another and lay down their lives in battle. They are not able to take up the spiritual path accepted by those in the renounced order. Although they are big heroes and political leaders, they cannot take to the path of spiritual realization. Big political leaders might be able to conquer equally powerful political enemies, but unfortunately, they cannot subdue their strong senses, the enemies that always accompany them. Not being able to conquer these nearby enemies, they simply try to conquer other enemies, and ultimately they die in the struggle for existence. They do not take to the path of spiritual realization or become sannyasis. Sometimes these big leaders take up the guise of a sannyasi and call themselves Mahatmas. But their only business is conquering their political enemies because they spoil their lives with the illusion of this is my land and my family. They cannot progress spiritually and attain liberation from the clutches of Maya. So here Bharat is speaking about, somebody may become a great personality, a great leader, doing great things for the nation, but also needs to understand that even they need to take up spiritual life. So do the service to the nation, but also cultivate spiritual life. So whoever we may be, whatever function we may be having in society, doing our duties, material duties, but also doing spiritual duties. Because material duties, okay, they are needed for the proper functioning of society, but they won't give us liberation. For that, we need to do our spiritual duties. Prasajati kvapi lata bhujashrayas
Prashachati kvapalata bhuja
tad ashraya vyaktapadadvijasvraha
Stadashrявaptapadadvichaspriha
kvachit kadachit darichakritastrasan
Kvachit kadachit chitrachakratashasan
sakyam vidate bakakang kagridrehe.
Shakyam vidate bakakangakagriha gride.
Sometimes the living entity in the forest of material existence takes shelter of creepers and desire to hear the chirping of the birds in those creepers. Being afraid of roaring lions in the forest, he makes friends with cranes, herons, and vultures. In the forest of the material world, there are many animals and birds, trees and creepers. Sometimes the living entity wants to take shelter of the creepers. In other words, he wants to be happy by being embraced by the creeper like arms of his wife. Within the creepers, there are many chirping birds. This indicates that he wants to satisfy himself by hearing the sweet voice of his wife. In old age, however, he sometimes becomes afraid of imminent death, which is compared to a roaring lion. To save himself from the lion's attack, he takes shelter of some bogus swamis, yogis, incarnations, pretenders, and cheaters. Being misled by the illusory energy in this way, he spoils his life. It is said, Harim Vina Mritim na Taranti. No one can be saved from the imminent danger of death without taking shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So, we may get so attached to our family life, the man to the woman, and the woman to the man, that we may forget to cultivate spiritual knowledge. And then, as old age comes, then we may feel, oh my God, I barely have any time now. What do I do? I don't have much time in this body. And at that time, one may just, because one has not cultivated spiritual life throughout their life, so they may just take up instructions from someone who is not bona fide, who's not giving the real spiritual instructions. And in this way, one may spoil his life. Because the only way we can save ourselves is Harim Vina Mritim Nataranti. No one can be saved from the imminent danger of death without taking shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. All the way the Shastras say. Krishna himself is saying in Bhagavad Gita, Sarva Dharmam Parityagya, surrender unto me. He says, Devi Esha Gunamai Mam Maya Prapadyante. Mam Eva Ye Prapadyante Mayam Etam Tarantite. Those who surrender unto me can cross beyond this world. He's saying, surrender unto me. He's saying, Bhaunam Janmanamante Jnanavan Mam Prapadyate. Vasudeva Sarvam Iti Samatma Durlabha. That after many, many births and deaths, one who is in knowledge, he surrenders unto me. So Krishna throughout the Bhagavad Gita is also telling us to surrender to him. Why? So that we can get out of this material world. We are not the body, we are spirit souls. We are part and parcel of God. The word Hari indicates the lion as well as the Supreme Lord. To be saved from the hands of Hari, the lion of death, one must take shelter of the Supreme Hari, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So here Hari, Prabhupada is explaining, also means lion, also means Supreme Lord Krishna. So to save ourselves from death, we need to take the shelter of Supreme Lord Hari. People with a poor fund of knowledge take shelter of non-devotee cheaters and pretenders in order to be safe from the clutches of death. In the forest of the material world, the living entity, first of all, wants to be very happy by taking shelter of the creeper-like arms of his wife and hearing her sweet voice. Later, he sometimes takes shelter of so-called gurus and sadhus, who are like cranes, herons, and vultures. Thus he is cheated both ways by not taking shelter of the Supreme Lord. So, Bharat, he is saying that we get cheated, that we are trying to find shelter other than God. Whereas what we need to do is we need to take shelter of God, take shelter of Krishna. We may take shelter of our husband or wife, or we may take shelter of some other person. But actually, what we need to do is take shelter of Krishna, surrender to Krishna. That is what is our surrender to Krishna. That's the only thing that can save us from birth and death. The only thing that can bring us out of this material world. Tervanchitoham sakulam samavishan.
Teram of Vanichito Hansha Kulam Shama Vishnam Visham.
Arochayanshilamapai tivanaran.
Arochayan Shilam Upati Vanaran.
Rajatirasena suni vritendriyaha.
Taja Jatirashen Shunivartinendriya
Parasparadvekshana vismritva vadihe.
Parasparodhishan Vishmriti Adavadi.
Being cheated by them, the living entity in the forest of the material world tries to give up the association of these so-called yogis, swamis, and incarnations, and come to the association of real devotees. But due to misfortune, he cannot follow the instructions of the spiritual master or advanced devotees. Therefore, he gives up their company and again returns to the association of monkeys who are simply interested in sense gratification and women. He derives satisfaction by associating with sense gratifiers and enjoying sex and intoxication. In this way, he spoils his life simply by indulging in sex and intoxication. Looking into the faces of other sense gratifiers, he becomes forgetful and thus approaches death. Sometimes a foolish person becomes disgusted with bad association and comes to the association of devotees and brahmanas and takes initiation from a spiritual master. As advised by the spiritual master, he tries to follow the regulative principles. But due to misfortune, he cannot follow the instructions of the spiritual master. He therefore gives up the company of devotees and goes to associate with simian people who are simply interested in sex and intoxication. So, someone, after being frustrated, after finding so many shelters and not actually finding the proper shelter, actually comes to the association of the devotees, gets initiated, tries to follow the regulative principles, but one may not be able to keep up the spiritual practices by some misfortune, and one may go away from the association of devotees. Those who are so-called spiritualists are compared to monkeys. Outwardly, monkeys sometimes resemble sadhus because they live naked in the forest and pick fruits. But their only desire is to keep many female monkeys and enjoy sex life. Sometimes so-called spiritualists seeking a spiritual life come to associate with Krishna conscious devotees. but they cannot execute the regulative principles or follow the path of spiritual life. Consequently, they leave the association of devotees and go to associate with sense gratifiers who are compared to monkeys. So, monkeys are called also false renounced because monkeys don't wear any clothes. They live simply, they eat only fruits. But monkeys have many, many wives, you know. So, the artificial renunciate. Outwardly, one may show that I'm greatly renounced, but one may have many, um, many sexual activities with different people. So, so one may come to the association of devotees, but one may again give up the association and join the association of so-called, as they are called, so-called spiritualists. Not really spiritualists, outwardly seeming to be renounced, but inwardly not Krishna conscious. Consequently, they leave the association of devotee. Again, they revive their sex and intoxication, and looking at one another's faces, they are thus satisfied. In this way, they pass their lives up to the point of death. And then one may feel happy that, okay, and it's not only me, see, everyone is doing the same thing, so I'm not doing anything wrong, Like we do something which is not good, we want assurance. So we look at others, we say, even they are doing it, even they are doing it. So to justify ourselves, to make ourselves feel good, we may look at to others, even they are doing it, so that I can also do it. And in this way, we may pacify ourselves. Drumeshu ramsyan sutadara vatsalo
Drumeshu ramshyam shuttadara vatselu
Vyavaya dino vivashaha swabandhani
yavaya dino vivasha swabandhani
Kvachit pramadad girikandare patan
क्वचित् प्रमादाद् गिरिकन्दरे पतन्
Balim kiritva gajabhita asthitaha.
वलिं गृहीत्वा गजभीता स्थितः.
When the living entity becomes exactly like a monkey jumping from one branch to another, he remains in the tree of household life without any profit but sex. Thus he is kicked by his wife just like the he-ass. Unable to gain release, he remains helplessly in that position. Sometimes he falls victim to an incurable disease, which is like falling into a mountain cave. He becomes afraid of death, which is like the elephant in the back of that cave, and he remains stranded, grasping at the twigs and branches of a creeper. The precarious condition of a householder's life is described herein. A householder's life is full of misery, and the only attraction is sex with the wife, who kicks him during sexual intercourse, just as the she-ass does her mate. Due to continuous sex life, he falls victim to many incurable diseases. At that time, being afraid of death, which is like an elephant, he remains hanging from the twigs and branches of the tree, just like a monkey. So, one who has not cultivated spiritual life, one who has not cultivated spiritual knowledge, then he becomes very, very afraid of death. अथ कथञ्चित् स विमुक्त आपतः
अथ कथञ्चित् शविमुक्त अपतः
पुनश्च सार्थं प्रविशति अरिन्दम
पुनश्च शार्थं प्रविशत्य निर्धनम्
अध्वा Yamushmin ajaya niveshito
Atvanmunishyanjya niveshito
Brahman janodyapi naveda kaschana.
Brahman janodyapi na veda kaśan.
O killer of enemies, Maharaj Rahūgaṇa, if the conditioned soul somehow or other gets out of his dangerous position, he again returns to his home to enjoy sex life, for that is the way of attachment. Thus, under the spell of the Lord's material energy, he continues to loiter in the forest of material existence. He does not discover his real interest even at the point of death. This is the way of material life. When one is captured by sexual attraction, he becomes implicated in so many ways and cannot understand the real aim of life. So we need to understand for the man, it's the woman. For the woman, it's the man. And being attached and attracted in this way, we forget our spiritual identities. Therefore, Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 7, Chapter 5, Text 31 says, Nate vidusvartha gatim hi Vishnu. Generally, people do not understand the ultimate goal of life. As stated in the Vedas, Om Tad Vishnu Paramam Padam Sada Pashyanti Surayaha. Those who are spiritually advanced simply look to the lotus feet of Vishnu. The conditioned soul, however, not being interested in reviving his relationship with Vishnu, becomes captivated by material activities and remains in everlasting bondage, being misled by so called leaders. So we are so attached to the material world, so attached to to this illusory energy of Maya. We forget that we are actually spirit souls. We forget that we have to cultivate spiritual knowledge, that we have to revive our relationship with God. We are so attracted to the material world. We forget our real identity, our relationship with God. Rahūgaṇa tvam apihi advanosya
Raghugana tvam apiha adhovanushya
sanyastadanda kritabhuta maitraha
shanyastadanda kritabhutamatra
asajjitatma harisevyachetam
ashajjitatma harishevashitam
jnana asimadayatara tipakram.
jnana shimyatyayatharita param.
My dear King Rahūgaṇa, you are also a victim of the external energy, being situated on the path of attraction to material pleasure. So that you may become an equal friend to all living entities, I now advise you to give up your kingly position and the rod by which you punish criminals. Give up attraction to the sense objects and take up the sword of knowledge, sharpened by devotional service. Then you will be able to cut the hard knot of illusory energy and cross to the other side of the ocean of nations. In Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna compares the material world to a tree of illusion from which one must cut oneself free. So Krishna is saying that in the 15th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna compares this material world to a great big banyan tree. And Krishna says we must cut down this great tree to free ourselves. Na rupam asye hatato pablapyate nanto na chadir na chasam pratishtha ashvatham enam suvirtamulam asanga shastrena dridena chitva tata padam tat parimargitavyam yasmin katana nivartanti bhuyaha tam eva chadyam purusham prapadye yata pravritti prashrita pura. The real form of this tree cannot be perceived in this world. No one can understand where it ends, where it begins, or where its foundation is. But with determination, one must cut down this tree with the weapon of detachment. By so doing, one must seek that place from which, having once gone, one never returns, and there surrender to that Supreme Personality of Godhead, from whom everything has begun, and in whom everything is abiding since time immemorial. Bhagavad Gita, chapter 15, text 3 to 4. So, again, here in this text, Krishna is saying, surrender. Surrender to me, to the Supreme Lord. He's saying, with determination, we have to cut down this tree that of this material world. And the weapon is detachment. Being determined to cut it, being detached, cutting down the tree, and surrender to God. Then we can go to the spiritual world. The Supreme Lord, He is the origin of everything. He is the origin of everyone. He is the cause of all causes, Sarva Karana Karanam. And so it is our duty to surrender to Him. We are all part and parcel of God. So it's the duty of each and every individual soul to surrender to the Supreme Lord. And Krishna is saying by surrendering to Him, one can get out of this material world and enjoy eternal blissful life with Him in the spiritual world. Any questions, comments?
No comment. It's all clear.
Okay, thank you so much. So we'll stop here for today. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Thank you so much.